Hi, Ellen.
Hi,
Ellen, God, I have been trying to get in touch with you. Good.
There she is.
Okay, there you are. Good. Okay.
4 doors away.
4 doors away, I know, and I've come to you and you always.
I know.
Find
I'm around.
Okay,
I'm very far.
you can't go too far. Okay.
I saw what you posted. It's like an old homework assignment.
Right. Remember those?
Of the different Melachim. Yeah, you saw the 3 ring, the holes there.
Yeah.
Is that this?
I think I found it in some old notebook or something.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it's old school.
You're good and you save things. I don't save anything. Mahei Yehuda, Mahei
Israel.
Israel. Oh
Isn't it
my gosh, wow. That makes it easier.
Yeah, it makes it much easier. How many? Wow.
Give it to me, Harold.
Yeah,
Bernie.
Hello, hi Ellen. Nice
Hi.
to see you.
Nice to be
Hi,
seen.
Barbara.
Oh, hi. How are you?
Hi, I was just watching the
Hi,
last part of the
Ellen.
last year. Harold,
Okay.
did you rescue the people from Glendale? Those Hasidim?
No, what happened?
Didn't you tell me those Hasidim were falling into?
Oh, yeah, I have no idea what happened with them. I just shook my head. Oh my God. I
What
actually the house that they rented, a beautiful house, but they're in the middle of no place. On our flight back from New Jersey, there was a Hasidic couple, a young couple, and they said they're going to LA for the first time. So I asked them, you know which restaurants? Oh yeah. You know which shuls? Yes. So they said, where are you staying? Are you staying on Pico? He showed me this address, Cromwell Avenue in Glendale. I said, Glendale? He says, yeah, it's only 20 minutes away. I said, there's not a Jew within 50 miles. They rented an Airbnb. It looked like a nice house, but they're in Glendale, whatever. They're probably speaking Armenian as
There's no Jewish presence there.
in Glendale.
Only the doctors in the hospital.
Yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
What's going on? Huh?
He's telling a story from last week.
Hello.
Oh, hi, Tammy.
Hi.
Hi, Mark.
Hi.
Everybody.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, Ellen. How you feel?
Baruch Hashem.
That's
Good.
Good to
Yeah.
see you, Ellen.
Good to be seen.
Wow, look at all these rabbis.
I know, it's interesting.
I have to see them.
Is the
Our
Rebbe.
leader is here.
Ah,
Good evening, everybody.
hi, good evening.
Susie is still up. One of our couples went to Mexico for a vacation. So we have their three children with us. So the baby is not feeling well, so Susie is soothing the baby right now, and we'll be down when she can.
She's otherwise occupied.
We are on in Melachim Perek Hey, Pasuk Yud Beis.
Ernie, can I interrupt you just a second to dedicate this Shir Le'ilui Nishmas Leah Basa Rav Yitzchak, Hemi's mother,
Oh, wow.
today.
To-
For
to-
Marav, yeah.
Tonight,
Oh,
tonight,
No, today.
today was the
Today.
yard site. Wow, well, we all knew her.
oh,
And it's
wow.
very, very
Now
appropriate.
she have an aliyah.
I have some of the Tanakh sources I have from Rav Rebbitzin Bronner's library that Temi graciously allowed me to go. She had a magnificent library.
Wow.
She had philosophical books by Plato, every line underlined with notes. I mean, she was a real,
clips.
she was a real, academic, real academic.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So Pasuk Yud Beis, Vaidaber. We were describing Shlomo Melech's magnitude, the effect he had on all the countries around him. His wisdom. We discussed both Chochma, Torah's Chochmas HaTorah, as well as scientific Chochma. And Vaidaber Shloshes Alafim Mashal, he spoke 3,000 parables. Vayishiro Chamishava Aleph, and he had 1,005 songs, poems. These referred to the Chochmah that he had Ruach HaKodesh, and that he was Mechaber Sforim, that had Mishalim, like Mishlei in it. And the word alafim, Rashi explains, based on a pasuk in Iyuv, va'alfecha chachma. The lashon alafim means to study as well. Doesn't just mean a number. And Rashi says shloshes limude mishalos, because there are 3 times in Sefer Mishlei which refers to Mishalim. The first pasuk says Mishlei Shlomo ben David Melech Yisrael. In Perek Yud, pasuk Aleph, Mishlei Shlomo. And then Perek Chafei, pasuk Aleph, Gamela Mishlei Shlomo. So Rashi sees the Shloshes Alafim means there are 3 categories of Mishalim, 3 limuds of Mishalim that he gave out in Sefer Mishlei. The Radak learns Kipshuto, that it means 3,000. And that we don't have, if you count how many psukim there are in Sefer Mishlei, is 800. So either each pasuk is 2 or 3 ways of explaining it, so that's how you get to 3,000, or that we've lost many of the Mishalim through the Golus, and they weren't written in the Sifrei Kodesh for Doros. That's how the Radak learns. In Eruvin, Masech Eruvin, Daf Chaf Alav Amud Beis, Amar Rav Hamnuna, Vaidaber Shloshes Alofim Mashal Vayishira Chamishim V'Alef, Malamed, She'Amar Shlomo Kol Dover V'Dover Shel Torah Shlosh Alofim Mashal. On everything in the Torah, Shlomo described 3,000 parables to allow you to learn it better. Val Kol Dover V'Dover Shel Soifrim Chamisha V'Alef Tamim. On every halach of Chazal, he gave 1,005 explanations. In Medrash Rabbah, it says the same thing. Amar Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani. What do you mean 3,000? Chazarnu al kol hamikros shel sifrei Mishlei Shir Hashirim Koheles v'lo matzinu shnisna b'shlomo elakar v'lishmona me'ez psukim ela melamed shekol pasuk she'amar yesh bo shnayim u'shloshim tamim. Each pasuk had multiple ways of darshaning them. Okay. Pasuk Yud Gimel. Vayidaber ala eitzim. He spoke about trees. Mina erez asher b'Lebanon, from the mighty cedars of Lebanon, ada ezov, until the little willow, asher yotzei bakir, that grows in the wall, moss. Vayidaber ala behemo. He talked about animals, ve'ala of, and the birds, ve'ala remes, creepy crawling things, and on ala dogim, on the fish. And he talked about zoology, botany, pharmacology, how the trees worked, how you can graft trees, which trees are good for medicinal purposes, which trees are good to use for construction. Say the Meforshim. And on animals, how do you graft animals? What do you feed them? How do you treat them? You know, in the scientific world, they date the organization and the creation of these disciplines to Aristotle. There was a lineage: Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. Aristotle lived until 323 BCE. He was this teacher of Alexander the Great. And that's when Alexander the Great died. And Aristotle is the one who codified, at least the way the Western world understands it, botany, zoology. He created these disciplines. My Rabbi Gruman, once showed me a Ramah who wrote Torah Sa'ola. And there's a place where the Ramah says that everything that Plato knew, he learned from Achitophel. Remember, Achitophel was the advisor of David HaMelech and probably Shlomo HaMelech. This wisdom is from 950 BCE and made it all the way down to Plato. So these psukim strike me as if Shlomo HaMelech already began this process of categorizing, organizing scientific thought that eventually was written in Greek by Aristotle. And if the Western civilization sees Aristotle as the father of this. But I think you could read in these psukim that they received a Masorah from Shlomo HaMelech.
Ernie, on that comment, the Me'am always has an interesting piece that talks about Shlomo HaMelech had actually published, written a sefer about curing medical problems, and people were using it, and to the detriment of their religious practices until the time of Chizkiyahu HaMelech.
So they hid it.
Banned them from doing that so that they would, because they had stopped praying to God for a cure. So instead, for some reason, he banned the book, and
it was nignaz. It was buried.
Yes.
Buried. There was no introspection. There was no introspection. There was no praying. They just totally, it really impeded their relationship. They went straight to the doctors who used the books as sources to help them. So sad.
You'd be surprised how many of our pharmacology comes from plants. The cocaines, the local anesthetic, on and on and on. It's so much.
Digitalis. Yeah.
Huh?
Digitalis.
Digital, exactly. So much of current medicine. Now, certainly, pharmacological companies learned from the chemical structures of them, and now they synthesize sort of variations and offshoots. But a lot of the foundations comes from plants. Now, Well, China, they say that the Chinese barefoot doctor had 5 drugs in his bag. And they were like, digital. They didn't know it as digitalis. They knew the roots and the plants. Chew on this and chew on that. And they had cocaine, the poppy, morphine, all of that, but they had it naturally.
Native Americans had the same thing.
Well, aren't the naturopathic doctors, or which doctors use, the herbs and more natural sources? I'm trying,
Yeah,
which,
but herbs and things like that are not the drugs that we're talking about. I'm talking about
you're talking about actual
that the
drugs.
doctors began to use, morphine, digitalis to treat heart failure, etc.
Quinine.
Local anesthetics, they all came from plants. So the fact that there are doctors that use herbs, that's like alternative medicine. It's not traditional medicine, but even traditional medicine,
Well.
many of the medications, they come from the organic world. Now, the Chazal saw something else in these psukim. Medrash Rabbah says, what kind of conversation can you have with a tree or about a tree? Ela Omar Shlomo, mipnei ma mitzora nitar begavoa shebegoyvim uvenemuch shebenemuchim. A part of the purification process of mitzora, you have to use eitz erez, you have to use a cedar tree, uve'ezov, and a willow. One is the highest tree, one is the lowest tree. Ayedei shigbia atzmo ke'erez. Why does somebody get saras? He was haughty. He spoke lashon hara about somebody. So laka b'tsaras. So because he made himself haughty, like a cedar's, and kivan shehispil atzmo ke'ezov nisrap al yedei elzeh. Therefore, the treatment is to mix the high and the low, and then you become cured of the tsaras. He said the same thing on Vaydaber labehem avalof. Chiyavshel la'adam l'daber behem avalof. Elo Omar Mineima behem aniteres b'shnei simonim ve'ha'of b'simin echad. When you shecht an animal, you have to cut the esophagus and the trachea. You have to go through 50% of those 2 simonim. A bird only requires 1 siman, or the trachea or the esophagus. Al shebeman nivreitz b'nei yabasha. Behema is created from the land. The oaf, kosu vechad oimer min adama. A bird, one pasuk implies that a bird was created from the land. Vayitzar Hashem Elokim min adama kol chayat hasadeh kol of hashamayim. The kosuv echad oimer yishritzu hamayim sheretz nefesh chaya ve'of ye'ofev. So bar kapara oimer merakak shebayam nivru was created from mud, a combination. So therefore, the animal is created from more of a substance, requires 2 simonim. The bird, which is a mixture between the 2, only required 1 siman. What Chazal are revealing to us is Shlomo HaMelech has given us deep understanding in some halachic concepts that we thought was just random. Why does an animal 2 simonim? Here, there's a shot given in why it works. He said, "V'ala dogim elabeneima behem achayva of tu'unin shchita." Before you eat an animal or a bird, you need to shecht it. But dogim ain't tu'unin. All you have to do is gather a fish. So Amarle me'ocha uvakar yishachet lahem umatzah lahem imet kol degayam yasef lahem umatzah. All you have to do is gather it. Elu tu'unin shchita ve'elu tu'unin asifa. So Shlomo Melech is laying down fundamental Yesodos. That's how Chazal understand what it says. He talked about all of these scientific things. Pasuk Yudal.
Ernie, can I chime in a bit?
Please jump in. Yes.
I'll chime in just quickly. Two things.
Who's speaking?
Chai Gravy.
Shia.
Oh, who's that?
Gravy.
Oh, hi,
Shai.
Shai.
Just quickly, in the archaeological record, the 11th and 10th century BCE, Assyrian kings also had this focus on natural wisdom. So the fact that the Tanakh is saying that Shlomo Melech was the greatest of wisdom tells you something that is likely of its time. That's number one. And number two, you're familiar with Josephus. One of Josephus's books is against Appian. So a Greek person by the name of Appian wrote a text that was really against Jews and Judaism. And so Josephus responded in this book against Appian. And in this book, he quotes Menander the Ephesian, who was this fellow Menander, who was from Ephesus in the area of Turkey today. And he wrote this about the king Hiram of Tyre, which is Lebanon. He wrote, under this king, there was a younger son of Abdon, who mastered the problems which Solomon, king of Jerusalem, had recommended to be solved. So there's this tradition, even outside of Judaism, of King Solomon of having had great wisdom.
There you go. And we gave some, the Ramah says that it came all the way down to Plato. That there's, and the Chazal talk about the Chachmei Atuna, the wise men of Athens. We have to recognize Western civilization began with the Greeks. Romans adopted Greek civilization and it went hala b'hala, but that's really when the study of Western civilization usually starts with Greek history.
Yeah.
But we see it had an earlier foundation potentially. We don't have, as Shai is giving us archaeological and other data to show that there's a connection. I just want to again explain this thing about the Simonim, that shekol sheyesh lo chayes chazaka tzrichim liyar shchita gam kein bofen chazak. V'lachein bebeima be'inyan shnei Simonim uvavshu chalash min habeima. That means the level of chayus of how that animal was created needs less. In order to dispatch it, it needs less because their level of chiyus is less. Okay. Pasuk Yudal. Vayavomi kolon lishmo et chochmat Shlomo. Countries sent ambassadors to Jerusalem to learn about the wisdom of Shlomo. Me'et kol malchei haaretz asher shamu es chochmaso. And then they went back to their own country and they brought some of this wisdom back. They were specifically sent to listen to the wisdom of Shlomo Melech. We learned last week that Shlomo Melech thought that he was living Bimosa Mashiach, and that the Goyim are going to come and be Mizgayer and convert and to be Makabel Malchus Shamayim. And the Binyan Beis HaMikdash was going to, like when we say in Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, V'yesoy, that tefillah that everyone, including the non-Jews, are going to come and worship Hashem. And the coming of the kings and the ambassadors to hear the wisdom of Shlomo, he thought that it fit, that Shlomo Melech was being miskariv them to Yiddishkeit. Now, it's interesting that Shaya just mentioned Hiram. Look at the next pasuk. Vayishlach Hiram Melech Tzor, Hiram, the king of Lebanon, at that time was Tyre, Es Avadov El Shlomo. He sent servants to Shlomo. Ki Shama, Ki Oto Mashchula Melech Tachas Avihu. We already had psukim earlier in Shmuel that David HaMelech already had a covenant with Hiram. And he had heard that they had anointed Shlomo under his father. Ki oheva Hiram leDavid kol hayamim. He was already in good standing with the Israelites under David HaMelech. And it was normal for kings to send out peace feelers to make sure that we have good relations. The Malbim points out, here they sent avodim. It says avodov. In Shmuel, it says Hiram sent malachim. So initially, the first time that they had a connection between the two governments, a malach is like an ambassador. You're going a very honorable role. So they had a bris created. With Shlomo, he didn't need to do a new bris. He continued in his father's way. So all he needed is to send avodim. So Tet Zayin, Vayishlach Shlomo el Hiram lemor. Shlomo sends word back to Hiram and Melech. Some say he through the avodim of Hiram. Others say he sent his own shluchim. And this is going to be a request of Hiram to help him build the Beis HaMikdash. This request also appears in Divrei Hayomim with a little change. And will maybe, as we learn the Psukim here, comment on some of the differences. Yud Zayin, Ataya date David Avi. You knew my father. Ki lo yachol livnot bayit. He couldn't build the bayis l'shem Hashem Elokav, in the name of his God, mipnei milchama asher tzvavuhu, because of all the wars that were around him. Ad teis Hashem osam tachas kapos raglai, until Hashem gave his enemies to under his feet. That he's pointing out that David had a desire to build the Beis HaMikdash, but he was busy with milchamos. He didn't have time to do it. You notice Shlomo doesn't reveal to Hiram, because that it says in Divrei Hayomim that David HaMelech spilled a lot of blood. That wouldn't be covered for his father, for Shlomo to say that. So he said he was as busy with his battles. He didn't say he wasn't permitted to do it, because his hands were steeped in blood. But now Hashem has given the enemies to us, and I'm going to go build the Beis HaMikdash. The Malbim says something very good here. And Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, who was the major Maggid of Musar in the Mir Yeshiva up until the early 80s, that the reason that David HaMelech didn't build the Beis HaMikdash isn't because he didn't have time to do it, because he was so busy. If you look in the Psukim in Shmuel Beis Perek Zayin, the davening that the Jewish people are going to do the Beis HaMikdash is going to help them defeat their enemies. Because Shlomo Melech, when they do the Chanukas HaMikdash, he's going to say, Ki eitzei amcha lemilchama al oivo, baderech, when the Jewish people go out to do battle, v'hispalalu al Hashem derech ha'ir asher bacharta ba. The Jewish people are going to daven using the city that you've chosen, Yerushalayim, ve'habayis asher baniti lishmecha. Im Kain, says Rav Chaim Shmulevitz through the Malbim, haya'ezet to'elet chitzoni leDavid lebinyan habayis. V'lo ya'binyan legamri l'shem Hashem. Umitam ze lo bano David HaMikdash. Wow. They wanted to build the bayis completely l'shem Shamayim. If they built it under David, and when they needed help to defeat their enemies, it wouldn't be l'shem Shamayim. It would be a to'elet to build the Beis HaMikdash. They would have used the Beis HaMikdash to daven to defeat their enemies. Without peace, the Beis Hamikdash is not l'shem shamayim, because we would serve Hashem to win over enemies. So they waited until Shlomo HaMelech, when there were no enemies. Now they could build the Beis Hamikdash l'shem shamayim. I think that's a very good pshat. Yudches. Ve'ata heniach Hashem Elokai li misaviv. Shlomo tells Hiram, Hashem has left me quiet. Ein soton ve'ein pegara. There's nobody chasing after us. Yutes v'nini omer livnos bayis l'shem Hashem Elokai. And I am now planning to build the Beis Hamikdash l'shem Hashem. Kasher diber Hashem el David avi lemor. Like David it was revealed by Hashem to David, Bincha shereitein tachtecha al kisecha, your son that I'm going to place on your throne after you, hu yivneh bayis lishmi, he will build the Beis Hamikdash in my name. In Divrei Hayomim, the psukim there, it says nothing about what Shlomo said, why David didn't build the Beis Hamikdash. He just asked Hiram to help him build it, the way that Hiram helped David build his palace. He doesn't go into this whole arichus regarding David HaMelech. Ve'atat tzaveh v'yichrutu li arazim. He asks that Hiram command that they cut cedars for him, min alvanon. Va'avadai yuim avadecha. My servants will be with your servants. Uschar avadecha iten lecha. I will give you the payment for your servants. Kechol asher tomar. Whatever you say, I owe. Ki ataya data ki ein banu ish yodeh lechvat eitzim katzidonim. There were no lumberjacks like the Lebanese. You know, they had big forests of cedars of Lebanon, and they were expert in how to chop these big trees down and how to, cut them up into, lumber. So he went to the experts. Now, there's a machlokes rishonim whose trees these were. Rashi says, Hayar b'mdinas Hiram, that this was a forest in Lebanon. And these Sidonim were expert at cutting them down, and they should cut it. The Radak says that this is Halavanon be'Eretz Yisrael, which was near Yerushalayim. We're going to see in Perek Tes, the Levanon hayatoch memshalat Shlomo. And he wasn't asking from Hiram for the trees, but that he should send him, lumber craftsmen, carpenters, people who know how to cut the wood and shape it. The same thing David. Barbanel argues with this pshat. He brings rayas. You see, Shlomo Melech wanted to pay. So, anyways, debate where these trees came from. Chafal.
Ernie?
Oh, yes, please.
Yeah, I just want, on the previous pasuk, I just wanted to bring an interesting Kli Yakar that's mentioned, that it says, Livnos Bayis L'Shem Hashem, not a Livnos Bayis L'Shem, because he's talking to Hiram, and Hiram is one of, although he admires Shlomo because of David HaMelech, and they had the previous friendship, he's trying to say that as opposed to all the idol worshiping nations around him, you're not building a house in which God will dwell, but it's the God's name where the people will come and pray to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the point that Kli Yakar is making.
Okay.
L'Shem Hashem, not
I hear it. And Bernie, we're going to see very soon, there's a machlokas exactly what the status of Hiram HaMelech was. What was he an akum? Was he a ger? We'll see soon. Let me just One of my patients just called. Let me just find out, make sure it's not an emergency. I'm sorry. Yes, this is Dr. Agatstein.
Maybe you should mute yourself.
Hello?
Maybe you should.
Yes.
mute yourself.
Yes, I can hear you.
Good advice.
Susie, you can continue.
None of my doctors ever called back so quickly.
Okay. Are you able to urinate? And since when have you not been able to urinate? You haven't urinated all day?
I'm watching my grandchildren because my kids went away, but naturally, the baby has 101.8 fever, you know?
I give up.
And so I've been in the other room, like patting the baby, like waiting for the fever to break. And
What do you put on the baby to make the fever break?
no, I gave the baby Tylenol,
Tylenol.
but then, patting and
Takes time to kick in.
right. But then it finally did just now. Like
You look tired, Susie.
I've been working very hard all day
Poor
from
girl.
7 o'clock on.
Oh, my.
But thank
When is
God,
your
right?
daughter
Thank
coming
God.
back?
How long are they away
Okay.
for?
They're coming back Thursday, but it's okay.
Oh my God,
But
that's
Sunday is always the
wow.
hardest, because there's no, just.
No other help.
Oh, my.
So I know, and there's a reason why they have them when they're younger,
Not unless you're Robert De Niro. He's what, 83?
all she said.
Al Pacino.
Al Pacino. Yeah.
Al Pacino
They're
as
not
well,
looking
setting a
after the
trend.
kids.
Crazy.
Susie, whose children are you watching? Ariella's. Oh, so nice. Yeah, they went to Cabo. It's very nice because they have kosher restaurants there.
Right, yes.
Hey, we just heard, yeah.
We were
Avi
there this
Buckman was
week.
there recently. He said it's very nice.
Who was there?
Avi Buckman.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah, Chabad is right there too. They're all nearby, kosher restaurants too.
Papa was on which coast? The Pacific or the Atlantic?
Just 2 hours away from here. It's 2 hours away and it's on the same zone. It's amazing.
Baja California.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's on the Pacific.
I know that in Cancun as well, there's lots of kosher options.
Yeah.
The Banyan Tree, I think, is the hotel, has a few kosher restaurants in it. I've never been, but I hear it's very nice.
Well, Panama has loads of restaurants.
Oh,
Oh,
right.
they're amazing. They're amazing. Yeah.
Oh, I hear.
Okay, back to Pasuk Chafal. Vayiki Shmo Chirem et Divrei Shlomo vayismach me'od. He was very happy. Vayomer Baruch Hashem Hayom Asher Natan David ben Chacham al ha'am harav hazeh. That Hashem gave David a son, a wise son, to rule over this great nation. He was happy because he was makir the Chachma of Shlomo. The Ralbag explains what Chachma did he see. But he saw that David, who was his friend, he was happy that Shlomo HaMelech is now building the base of Mikdash, and he wanted to do whatever Shlomo asked him to do.
Ernie, I just wanted to say,
He was, by the way, Barbie, he was wise because he didn't give great demands on Hiram. He didn't want to do anything for free. He wanted to pay everything. So Hiram thought that this was very smart. Yes, Barbara.
I wanted to say that Shlomo did not say the true reason that why David did not build the Beit HaMikdash, but why? I wonder why he didn't say, well, because of my father's conquering of our enemies, I have the opportunity to build, the Beit HaMikdash. So it not just I would have thought that not just saying that my father did not have the time to build a Beit HaMikdash because he was busy with, fighting against our enemies. But like, it would have been nice for him to say, well, because of my father's efforts, I have the opportunity to build a Beit HaMikdash. You don't see that though.
In Divrei Hayomim, it's like that.
Oh, it is like that?
It doesn't say anything about the reasons why David didn't do it. So there, remember, as we learned, Ezra wrote that. And here Yirmiyah wrote Melachim. So remember, we gave a shot that this is for Umasal. Could have been your reasonings was why Ezra left it out there, and the way Rav Chaim Shmulevitz wants to learn it. There was a real toelet to build the Beis Hamikdash when there was peace. Shlomo could have said like you're saying, and in fact, in Divrei Hayomim, that's how it comes out.
Okay.
Vayishlach Hiram el Shlomo lemor Chav Beis. Shamati et asher shalachta elai. I heard what you said, the message. Ani esek et kol chavtzech. I will do what you want. Vatzei arazim uvatzei vroshim. What does he say vroshim is? With the cedar trees?
Cypress woods.
Cypress, okay? Now, Shlomo never asked about that. But I guess he added that. Maybe it's another very good tree for binyan. And the Malbim says, Shlomo asked for it, but in a remez. He said, Et asher shalachta elai, really what you requested sort of subtly. I'll give you cedars, even though you only asked me for people who are going to cut the cedars, and I'll throw in the cypress trees. Chav Gimel, Avadai Yoridu min Alvanon, Yama. Look what they did here. They're going to bring the trees down from the Mediterranean. You tell me where to ship these trees. They lashed them together with rope and they made rafts. And they floated these trees down the Mediterranean until they went to Yaffo. In Divrei Hayomim, it says specifically that they floated them down to Yaffo, Tel Aviv Yaffo. Today, Yaffo is also a port. And then, Vatata said, Chefzi, Latet Lechem Beiti. That means the servants of Shlomo will carry the wood from Yaffo to Yerushalayim. Boy, that's some job. Chavdalit. Hiram provided the cypress and the cedars. Ushlomo natan lechiram 20,000 porchitim makolet lebeito. He gave food. The word makolet, a grocery store, comes from here. That he provided everything that was needed: olives and bread, vesrim korshem katit, fine olive oil. And as for whatever years it took for them to do it, he provided that amount of food and logistics. In Divrei Hayomim, there's a second shlichus that appears. And they have more of a dialogue in terms of what's going to be sent. Okay. Chavav. Vashem nasan chachma l'shlomo kasher diber lo. Vayi shalom ben Chiram ben Shlomo vaychletu brit shneim. They established a permanent peace treaty between the two. Now, Yevomis, Chav Gimel, Omer Aleph. Tosfos asks, V'im Tomar, Hechi Karas Bris Shlomo and Chira Melech Tzor. How did Shlomo HaMelech make a bris? It says in Dvorim, Lo Sichros Lahem Bris, V'lo Sechanem. And V'chol HaUmos Od De'avodas Kechovim, I Rikamo V'lo Sechanem. If a nation, certainly the 7 nations, but any nation that's worshiping Avodah Zarah, you're not allowed to make a bris. Tosfos asks as well, how did Avram Avinu make a bris with Avimelech? Eventually it says, Vayikach Avraham tzon v'akar, Vayitein l'Avimelech, Vaychlosu shneim bris. So Tosfos over there explains both kashas. Shema lo yasar el krisus bris l'shem avodas kechavim. If you make a bris with and they're gonna use the bris to worship avodah zarah, like it says in Shmos, lo sichros lahem ve'el Eloheim bris. Says Tosfos, O Shema Chira Melech Tzor Ger Toshav Haya. A Ger Toshav is a non-Jew who lives by the 7 mitzvahs Bnei Noach. So in a Ger Toshav, you can make a bris. Others, Tosfos says, the lo mitzvah krisus bris, eladavka b'shiva umos. The Amoiri, the Yevusi, the Girgash, the 7 nations that are mentioned in the Torah, only them can't you make a bris with. But other nations, Lebanon, they're not one of the 7 nations in Eretz Canaan. It says, lo sechayeh kol neshama. That's only by the Zaina Umos. Shiva goyim rabim vatsubim mincha dvorim hacharem tacharim osam. Don't make a bris, you have to destroy them. So there were 3 reasons why Shlomo Melech was permitted to make a bris. 1, the bris was not made l'shem avodah zarah. 2, it's only prohibited to make a bris with the Shava Ha'amim. He's not one of Shava Ha'amim. Or 3, Chiram was a Ger Toshav.
He's also a very wise man if he came up with a plan to take this, the trees, the cedar trees, and make them into ships until they reach the port of in Yafo, and then convert them into just carry them up to Yerushalayim. That's a very clever plan. He's the first one to come up with an amphibious vehicle.
Correct. And then it says, there's different types of bris. This is the time of the Kral says this. Yesh krisus bris, l'shem ava v'yedidus, friendship. V'shekol medina tilamed mechavruta. You want cross-pollination cultures. Mechavratat hadrim atovim v'anagodat avot Shabbat. V'tani gam kein etzla. V'zeh asra Torah. Shezeh yachol lavi l'shilam dumem gam kein avodah zarah. Aval krisus bris l'shem mischar. Economic ties is permitted. Cultural ties we have to be concerned about. But economic business with the Goyim is not a problem. Now, Tosfos has a problem because a Ger Toshav is supposed to live in Eretz Yisrael. Chiram doesn't live in Eretz Yisrael. So Tosfos might mean there that whenever Goyim accept not to worship Avodah Zarah and they want to do the Sheva Mitzvos, you can make a bris with them, and they're called a Ger Toshav. Okay, so we have, what are they called? Noahides. We have today non-Jews that keep the Sheva Mitzvos Bnei Noach. You know, there's something called the Masons, right? There's a Masonic lodge,
Right.
and there were Jews, even from Jews, who reached very high levels, like 33-degree Mason.
Has to do with the building of the temple. They were the builders of the temple.
Harold,
Mason.
Hiram.
Yeah.
It descends from Hiram.
Oh,
It relates to this
interesting.
Hiram, the builder, and the knights, and this whole thing has some foundation from them.
Yeah, the Knights Templar and all that, yeah.
But that's much later,
Later,
because the Knights was already in the Middle Ages. But
Crusades.
so they say that this goes back all the way to Hiram, who helped Solomon build the temple, exactly like Harold said. The Rambam says very clearly, Osir lanu laniach odei kachov v'neinu. If we conquer Israel, we can't leave idol worshippers around. And not even l'makom for schoira, we can't even let them pass through, unless they're mekabel alav shava mitzvah shestavu bnei Noach. V'im kibel alav shava mitzvahs arei ze ger toshav. So it seems like the Rambam holds it could be a ger toshav, even though you don't live in Eretz Yisrael. So according to the way the Rambam learning, Hiram could be a ger toshav, and that's why we could make a bris with him. Now, Avimelech probably was one of the Zaina Umos. So how did Avram Avinu do it? The Ponim Yafo says he was also a ger toshav, that he kept the Zayin mitzvahs bnei Noach. So for economic ties, we can have relations with the non-Jews around us. He needed this covenant. The Rosh says for something that Klal Yisrael needs, you're allowed to make a covenant. And he needed these things for the building of the Beis HaMikdash. So there's no issue of lo sachane, because we needed things from them. Same thing by Avimelech. The Plishtim were plugging up all the wells. So Avram made a bris with them to unplug the wells. Chav Zayin. Vayala Melech Shlomo Mas. We call Yisrael. Vaya Mas Shloshim Elef Ish. Mas usually means a tax. Rashi says Mas Shel Kesef. The Radak says no. It was like a draft. He needed people to go up to Lebanon to cut eitzim with the servants of Hiram, and they drafted 30,000 people. According to Rashi, was the amount of money to pay 30,000 people. According to Radak, it's the number of people that were drafted. Now, they did it 10,000 every month. So there was a total of 30,000. 10,000 would go for a month and 20,000 would stay home. From there, a din in how you're supposed to treat your wife. You're not supposed to go away for too long. It's supposed to be 2/3 at home, 1/3 away. Vaishlachem levanona. Pasuk Chavches. Aseret alafim b'chodesh chalifot. There was a rotation. Chodesh yu b'vanon, shnayim chadashim b'veito, va'adoniram alamas. Adoniram was in charge. Chazal learned from him, chiyuv adam onan li'ishto. How conjugal rights for his wife, it's learned from here. It says in Masechta Ksubah Samach Aleph, HaTalmidim yotzim leTalmud Torah shelo birshus shloshim yom. They can only go away for a month without permission of their wife. Longer than that, they can't. Rav Yochanan learns it from this Binyan Beis Hamikdash. The Tzar Chabal Lios Beveso Shnei Chadosh Mekol Chodesh Shebachutz. 2 months home, 1 month away. That's a Chazal learned that din. Says the Yerushalmi, Subis Hey Amid Beis Am Ravavim. Chida LaKadosh Baruch Hu Pri Revia Yoser Beis Hamikdash. The command of be fruitful and multiply is more important for Kadosh Baruch Hu than the building of Beis Hamikdash. Like it says, Chodesh Yubel Vanon, Shnaim Chadoshim Beveso. Spend more time at home. Gadol Inyan Pri Revia Binyan Kadosh Baruch Hu. Yudches. Vahi l'shlomo 70,000 nosei sabal u80,000 chotzei bahar. Shlomo Melech had 70,000 schleppers, right? They had to bring all that wood that was floated down to Yafo, to Yerushalayim. They would carry it on their shoulders, right? Min hayam ad Yerushalayim, and they had stone quarries where they were chopping stones to bring to the Beis Hamikdash. So they had 150,000 workers. Says Chazal, Kulan hayu gerim shnizgaru machmas gedulat Shlomo v'shulchano. Shlomo Melech was so successful that 150,000 converts became Jews, and these were the ones that were used for this work. Says Pasuk Lamed Levad Misor Nitzavim L'Shlomo Shalom HaChabim. Besides, last week we learned about the sort of officers that were placed over each regions. Shloshes Alafim U'Shlosh Meos, 3,300 Harodim Ba'am Osim B'Mlacha. They were like the supervisors, the experts in building. Vayitzav Melech vayasiu avanim dolot, avanim yikarot liyased habayit avnei gazit. They hewed out of stone, massive stone. Those of you who've been to the Kotel and you've seen below where they've cut down, they say that even that's part of the remnant wall of Shlomo Melech's wall, massive stones. Now, you couldn't use metal in the Beis Hamikdash, but they would do it mibachutz, outside, and then schlep it inside. Or they used a special worm called the shamir, that you could use that in the Makom HaMikdash. Vayivsalu bnei Shlomo vnei Chiram v'Gvilim. So the builders of Shlomo, the builders of Chiram, and the Gvalim, they worked with the stone. Vayachinu hayetzim v'avanim livnot habayit. And they got all the material ready to assemble and to build. Mirtz Hashem, next week, we will start learning about the Binyan Beis Hamikdash. Any questions, comments, ha'arot?
Just general information. When was Haifa? I mean, now most of us think of Haifa as the main port of Eretz Yisrael. Is Haifa mentioned at all in the Tanakh?
I don't think Yafo is mentioned as the port that was used. Akko is mentioned in your Sefer Yoshua and Shmuel. We had Akko mentioned. I don't recall whether the word Haifa. Haifa is a modern city built by the Israelis as a port. I'm not sure it functioned as a port before. Tel Aviv Jaffa, I think the port of Jaffa is where the Jaffa oranges went out to Europe from.
Well, Ashdod today is a big port.
And they built Ashdod as well. I think that's all post-state.
I think the British built Haifa. No?
We have to do some research.
The British were in Akko.
Huh?
The
The British had a big fort in Akko,
In Akko.
and they executed some of the Irgunists there.
There's a prison there, a big prison. They
Yeah.
used to use the
So
prison.
we have to, I think these are modern cities. I don't think Haifa was even used, by the palace, by whatever Arabs lived there before. I think they used Jaffa.
Ernie, Divrei Hayom, was that written by Ezra?
Ezra,
Okay.
correct. Remember when we first started, we explained the Melachim is written by Yirmiyah, and they each had sort of their own agenda, why some leave things in and why some things out. I'm gonna have to go back and review. We gave reasonings behind each one of them. One talks about as a nation, and one, like, I think Ezra was dealing more with that, and one focused more on the individual.
Thank you.
Ernie,
Okay, have a good week, everybody.
Ernie,
Next
Haifa
week
was
It's gonna
built-
be right next week is regular time.
Ernie, Haifa was built in the 14th century BCE.
Hmm.
Okay, so Haifa was a port, so Haifa was used as a port
Ancient.
all along,
Wow.
okay?
According to my friend Google.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I'll also do some research to find out whether Haifa is mentioned anywhere in Tanakh.
Okay,
Go
thank
ahead.
you. Thank you.
Go
Have a
ahead,
good
everybody.
Tov.